Have you ever had someone just barge into your home? Imagine pulling up to your peaceful lake cabin after a long week, expecting nothing but quiet and the familiar comfort of your own space, only to find a stranger inside. Not just any stranger, but the kind of person who thinks the rules don't apply to them. Someone who believes they have the right to invade your privacy, to cross every boundary, and to make you feel powerless in your own sanctuary. That's exactly what happened to me. I pulled my truck up the gravel driveway, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the water. The air was crisp, the kind of fresh that only a lake surrounded by pine trees can offer. I was looking forward to a weekend away from the noise of the city, away from the endless emails and the constant pressure. This cabin wasn't just a place. It was my refuge, my family's legacy, the one place where I could breathe. But as I stepped out of the truck, something felt off. The front door was wide open. My heart dropped. I froze for a moment, scanning the porch. No wind had blown it open. No one else was around. And then I saw her, standing inside the cabin, rifling through my things like she owned the place. It was Karen. You know the type. The HOA Karen. The self-appointed neighborhood watchdog who thinks she's above the law, who thrives on control and petty power plays. The kind of person who calls the shots, not because she's elected or appointed, but because she's loud, entitled, and relentless. She didn't even look up when I called her name. Karen, what are you doing in my cabin? Her eyes flicked toward me, a smirk playing on her lips. I'm just making sure everything's up to code, she said, her voice dripping with that passive-aggressive tone that immediately sets your teeth on edge. Up to code? In my own home? Without my permission? I stepped closer, anger bubbling beneath the surface. You can't just come in here. This is private property. She shrugged as if my words were meaningless. The HOA has rules and I'm just enforcing them. You should be grateful. Grateful? For this invasion? For the blatant disrespect? I wanted to scream, to tell her exactly what I thought of her and her so-called authority. But something stopped me. Something deeper than anger, a cold, sinking feeling that this wasn't just about a broken rule or a petty dispute. This was about control, about power, about someone who thought they could walk all over me and my family's legacy. And then it hit me. I wasn't alone inside the cabin. Behind me in the living room stood a man I hadn't expected to see, calm, composed, and watching the scene unfold with a quiet intensity. It was the state attorney general. I blinked, trying to process what was happening. Why was he here? What was he doing in my cabin? And more importantly, what would happen now that Karen had no idea who she was messing with? I could feel the tension crackling in the air, thick and electric. Karen's smirk faltered for the first time. The smug confidence that had carried her this far was suddenly replaced by something else, uncertainty, fear, maybe, because she didn't realize that this time the tables were about to turn. Have you ever been in a situation where someone thought they had all the power, only to find out they were the ones completely exposed? That's exactly what was about to happen. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Because this isn't just a story about a nosy HOA Karen. It's about standing up for what's right, about fighting back when the system tries to crush you, and about the unexpected allies who show up when you need them most. So buckle up. This is just the beginning. This cabin isn't just a piece of real estate. It's a living memory, a sanctuary carved out of decades of family love, laughter, and even loss. To understand why what happened here cuts so deep, you need to know what this place means to me and why I would fight tooth and nail to protect it. It all started with my grandparents. They bought this little lake cabin back in the early 70s when the area was still wild and quiet, far from the noise and chaos of the city. They wanted a place where the family could gather, where the kids could run free, and where the world's problems could be left behind, at least for a little while. I remember summers spent here as a kid, waking up to the smell of pine and fresh water, the sound of loons calling across the lake, and the soft lapping of waves against the shore. The cabin was simple, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Every creak in the floorboards, every scratch on the wooden table, every faded photograph on the wall told a story. My parents took over after my grandparents passed, and then it came to me. It's been a constant through all the chaos of life, a place to escape the endless grind of work, the stress of bills, the noise of the city. Here, I could breathe. Here, I could be myself. This cabin is where I proposed to my wife, where we brought our kids for their first fishing trips, where we celebrated birthdays and holidays. It's where we buried my father's ashes under the old oak tree by the water, a quiet, sacred spot that holds more meaning than words can express. So when the HOA started poking around, sending letters and making demands, it felt like a personal attack. Not just on me, but on everything this place stands for. They don't see the memories, the history, the love. To them, it's just a property line, a set of rules to enforce, a box to check. The HOA's rules are cold, impersonal, and often arbitrary. They claim to protect property values and community standards, but what they really protect is control, control over every little thing, from the color of your shutters to the height of your grass. And if you don't fall in line, they come after you. I tried to reason with them at first. I attended meetups, sent emails, even tried to find common ground. But Karen, the HOA's self-appointed enforcer, made it clear early on that she wasn't interested in dialogue. She was interested in power, in making examples out of anyone who dared to push back. There were small conflicts at first, a warning about a dock that was too long, a complaint about a fire pit that was too close to the property line. Nothing major, but enough to send a message. We're watching you. But this wasn't just about rules. It was about sending a signal that this cabin, this sanctuary, wasn't truly mine, that the HOA had the final say, no matter what. And that's when things started to escalate. I won't lie, it was frustrating, exhausting, and sometimes downright scary. The constant scrutiny, the whispered rumors among neighbors, the feeling that I was being targeted just for standing my ground. It wore on me and my family. But through it all, I held on to one thing. This cabin is worth fighting for. Because it's not just wood and nails. It's a legacy. It's a refuge. It's a piece of my family's soul. And no entitled HOA Karen was going to take that away from me. Little did I know, the battle was only just beginning. The invasion of my privacy, the illegal break-in, those were just the opening moves in a much bigger fight. A fight that would test everything I believed in and force me to find allies I never expected. So as I stood there that day watching Karen rummage through my things, I wasn't just angry. I was determined, because this cabin and what it represents was worth every ounce of that fight. And trust me, you're going to want to hear how this all unfolds. Because sometimes standing up to bureaucracy and entitlement isn't just about winning a battle, it's about protecting your home, your family, and your peace of mind. And that's exactly what I was about to do. It started with a letter, a crisp, official-looking envelope stamped with the HOA's logo, slipped under my front door one afternoon while I was at work. At first, I thought it might be a routine notice, maybe a reminder about dues or a community event, but as soon as I read the first few lines, my stomach sank. The letter was vague, but the message was clear. I was out of compliance. The dock at my cabin was non-conforming. The fire pit was a potential hazard, and my landscaping was not in keeping with community standards. It didn't specify exactly what was wrong or how to fix it, just a thinly veiled threat that if I didn't comply, there would be consequences. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands. It felt like a punch to the gut. After everything this cabin meant to me, after all the memories and hard work, I was suddenly being told I was a problem, that I was somehow a threat to the community. I called the HOA office immediately, hoping to get some clarity. That's when I first spoke to Karen. Her voice was calm, almost sweet, but there was an edge to it, the kind of tone that says she's already made up her mind and you're just a nuisance. We're just enforcing the rules, she said. Everyone has to follow the same standards. I tried to explain my side, how the dock had been there for decades, how the fire pit was a safe distance from anything flammable, how my landscaping was designed to preserve the natural beauty of the area, But Karen wasn't interested in listening. She repeated the same lines over and over, like a broken record. We have to maintain property values. It's for the good of the community. It was clear she wasn't just enforcing rules, she was wielding power, and I was the target. I decided to attend the next HOA meeting, hoping to speak face to face to find some common ground. But walking into that room was like stepping into a battlefield. The atmosphere was cold, formal, and hostile. Karen was there, of course, sitting at the head of the table with that smug expression that made my skin crawl. When I tried to speak, she cut me off. "We've already discussed this," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "The rules are clear. You need to comply or face fines." The other board members nodded in agreement, their faces blank and unyielding. It was us versus them in the purest form. I left that meeting feeling defeated but more determined than ever. This wasn't just about a dock or a fire pit. It was about standing up to a system that didn't care about people, only control. And I wasn't alone. I could feel the quiet support of neighbors who had been through similar battles, who understood the frustration of being bullied by an entitled HOA. But this was just the beginning. Karen's warnings would soon turn into something far more invasive, something that crossed every line I thought was untouchable. And when that happened, I realized I was in for the fight of my life. I never thought it would come to this. I knew Karen was relentless, that she thrived on control and intimidation, but breaking into my cabin, that was a line I never imagined she'd cross. Yet, there I was, standing frozen on my own porch, staring at the open door, my heart pounding in disbelief. It happened on a day I had to run into town for a few hours. I left the cabin with the windows cracked open, trusting that my sanctuary would remain just that, mine. But when I returned, the front door was ajar, swinging slightly in the breeze. My first thought was that maybe I'd forgotten to lock it, but then I saw the footprints in the dirt, the scuff marks on the threshold, and the unmistakable signs that someone had been inside. I stepped cautiously inside, every nerve on edge. The cabin was usually a place of peace, but now it felt violated, like a sacred space had been desecrated. The scent of pine and lake water was still there, but mingled with something else, the cold, invasive presence of someone who didn't belong. And then I saw her, Karen. She was rifling through my kitchen drawers, her face twisted in that smug expression she always wore when she thought she was winning. She didn't even bother to hide it. It was as if she believed this was her right to invade my home, to assert her power in the most blatant way possible. I wanted to scream, to demand she leave immediately, but I was stunned, caught between shock and fury. How could she think this was acceptable? How could she break every rule, every law, and just walk into my cabin like it was hers? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This wasn't just about a broken rule anymore. This was about respect. Respect for my property, my family, and my peace of mind. Karen had crossed the line, and there was no going back. I confronted her, my voice shaking but firm. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" She looked up, startled for the first time, but quickly masked it with that same condescending tone. "I'm making sure everything's in order. You wouldn't want to be fined, would you? By breaking into my home without permission, that's illegal." She shrugged, as if the law was just another obstacle to be ignored. "The HOA has the authority to enforce the rules however we see fit." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Authority? This was trespassing, plain and simple, but Karen acted like she was untouchable, like the rules only applied to everyone else. I took out my phone and started recording. Every word, every action, I needed proof, because if this was going to be a fight, I wasn't going to lose it silently. As I recorded, I noticed something else. Papers scattered on the table, some of them marked with official HOA stamps, others handwritten notes in Karen's unmistakable scrawl. Well, it looked like she was trying to build a case against me, digging through my personal things to find any excuse to punish me further. That's when the anger really hit. This wasn't just about rules or property lines anymore. This was personal. It was about power, control, and humiliation. I told her firmly, "You need to leave. Now." She hesitated, then finally closed the drawers and walked toward the door. But before she left, she shot me a look, one that said this wasn't over, that she was coming back, and next time, it would be worse. I locked the door behind her and sank against the wall, my hands trembling. The violation was overwhelming. This was my home, my refuge, and now it felt like a battlefield. But I wasn't going to back down. Not now, not ever. Because what Karen didn't realize was that this break-in was the moment everything changed. It was the moment I stopped being just a homeowner and started fighting back. And you won't believe what I found inside that cabin after she left, something that would change everything. But I'll get to that soon. For now, just know this. When someone crosses the line, when they invade your home and your peace, you have two choices. You can stay silent and let them win, or you can stand up, gather your strength, and fight for what's rightfully yours. I chose to fight, and that choice would lead me to an unexpected ally, someone with the power to turn the tide. But that's a story for the next chapter. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more overwhelming, the unexpected happened. I wasn't alone in this fight, not by a long shot. And it all started with a surprise visitor showing up at my cabin completely out of the blue. I was still reeling from Karen's illegal break-in, pacing the living room, trying to make sense of what to do next. That's when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I opened the door cautiously. Standing there was a man I recognized immediately, calm, confident, and with an air of authority that filled the room. It was the State Attorney General. Now you might be wondering, what on earth was the State Attorney General doing at my little lake cabin? The truth is, he was here on unrelated business, visiting a friend nearby. But once I told him what had happened, the break-in, the harassment, the endless battles with the HOA, his interest was piqued. We sat down, and I shared everything. The letters, the meetings, Karen's illegal entry. As I spoke, I could see the wheels turning in his mind. This wasn't just a personal dispute. It was a potential abuse of power, a violation of property rights, and maybe even something bigger. That's when he started dropping knowledge nuggets, legal facts that I hadn't fully understood before, but that suddenly made everything clearer. First, he explained that homeowners have strong protections under state law. HOAs can enforce rules, yes, but they cannot break the law to do it. Trespassing, illegal entry, harassment, those are serious offenses, even if the HOA tries to hide behind their bylaws. He told me about the limits of HOA authority. They can't just barge into your home or property without permission or a court order. And any fines or penalties have to follow due process, meaning they can't just slap you with fees without proper notice and a chance to respond. Most importantly, he emphasized the power of documentation. Keep records of everything, he said. Letters, emails, photos, videos. If they cross the line, you need evidence to protect yourself. Hearing this was like a lifeline. For so long, I'd felt powerless, like I was fighting an invisible enemy with no rules. But now, armed with this knowledge and the support of someone who understood the law, I felt a spark of hope. The Attorney General also mentioned that there have been increasing complaints about this particular HOA, allegations of overreach, intimidation, and even corruption. He was quietly investigating, and my case could be a key piece of the puzzle. That was the moment I realized I wasn't alone. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was a fight for every homeowner who had ever felt bullied or silenced by an entitled HOA. We talked strategy, how to document incidents, how to respond to threats, and when to escalate matters legally. He encouraged me to reach out to neighbors, to build a community of support, because no one wins these battles alone. As he left that day, he looked me in the eye and said, "You're doing the right thing. Keep standing your ground. We're watching." I felt a surge of empowerment. For the first time in months, I wasn't just reacting to Karen's attacks. I was preparing to fight back with the law on my side. But the question lingered. How would this change the game? Karen had no idea who she was really dealing with now, and neither did the rest of the HOA. This unexpected alliance was about to turn everything upside down. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next, because when the powerful step in, the rules change, and the entitled Karen's world starts to crumble. Stay with me. The fight is just getting started. Just when I thought the worst was behind me, Karen and the HOA decided to double down. They weren't going to back off quietly, not when they felt their control slipping away. Instead, they launched a full-scale retaliation campaign, and it hit me and my family harder than I ever expected. It started with more letters, this time not just vague warnings, but outright threats. Fines piled up, each one more absurd than the last. They claimed I was violating rules I'd never even heard of, citing obscure clauses buried deep in the HOA's thick rulebook. The language was cold, legalistic, designed to intimidate and confuse. But it wasn't just the paperwork. Karen began showing up at community events, whispering to neighbors, spreading rumors about me, painting me as the troublemaker, the outsider who didn't belong. I could feel the shift in the neighborhood, the way some neighbors started avoiding me, unsure which side to take. The harassment escalated. One morning I found my mailbox vandalized, the lock broken and the contents scattered. Another time, someone slashed the tires on my truck. It was clear. This was no longer just about rules. This was personal. The emotional toll was crushing. My family felt it too. The kids were scared to come to the cabin, worried about what might happen next. My spouse stayed up late, worrying about our safety and the future of this place we loved so much. I remember one night sitting on the porch, staring out at the dark lake, feeling completely alone. The weight of the fight pressed down on me, threatening to break my spirit, but deep inside a fire burned, a refusal to let fear win. Karen's tactics were ruthless, but they only made me more determined. I knew I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my family, for my neighbors, for anyone who had ever been bullied by an entitled HOA. And I wasn't going to let them win. This was the moment when the stakes became crystal clear. The battle wasn't just about property lines or rules. It was about justice, respect, and standing up to those who abused their power. Karen thought she could intimidate me into submission. She was wrong. Because sometimes, the darkest moments are the ones that forge the strongest resolve. And just when I thought I had seen it all, something happened that changed everything, a turning point that no one saw coming. But I'll get to that soon. For now, just know this. When the powerful try to crush you, it's not the end. It's the beginning of a fight that can change everything. Just when I thought I was on the brink of losing everything, the story took a turn I never saw coming. The state attorney general, the man who had casually dropped by my cabin weeks earlier, wasn't just a friendly visitor. He was quietly, deliberately, investigating the very HOA that had been tormenting me. I found out about it one afternoon during a phone call. The AG's voice was calm but serious. "We've been looking into this HOA for some time now," he said. "There are allegations of corruption, abuse of power, and intimidation tactics that go far beyond what's legal." I sat there, stunned. All those late nights, the threats, the harassment, it wasn't just me. It was part of a bigger pattern. And my case? It wasn't just a random complaint. It was a crucial piece of evidence in a much larger investigation. He explained that the HOA board had been using their authority to bully homeowners, enforce arbitrary rules, and silence anyone who dared to speak up. Worse, there were signs of financial mismanagement, funds disappearing, contracts awarded without oversight, and a culture of secrecy designed to protect the powerful few. Hearing this was like a weight lifting off my shoulders. For months, I'd felt isolated, like I was fighting a faceless enemy. But now, with the AG's office involved, justice suddenly felt within reach. He told me to keep documenting everything, every letter, every interaction, every threat. "Your story is important," he said. "It's part of a bigger fight to hold these people accountable." The power dynamic shifted overnight. Karen and the HOA no longer had the upper hand. They were under scrutiny, and their every move could be challenged. I felt a surge of hope, the kind that comes from knowing you're not alone, that the law is on your side, and that the truth has a way of coming out. But this was just the beginning of a new chapter. The investigation meant the HOA would fight back harder, desperate to protect themselves. The tension was about to reach a boiling point. Wait till you see how this plays out. Because when the powerful start to crumble, the fallout can be explosive. And trust me, you don't want to miss a second of it. The day Karen showed up at my cabin again, I knew this wasn't going to be like before. This time, I wasn't alone. The state attorney general was with me, calm, authoritative, and ready to back me up. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin prickle and your heart race. Karen arrived just as the sun was dipping behind the trees, casting long shadows across the porch. She stepped out of her car with that same smug expression, like she owned the place. But this time, when she saw the AG standing beside me, her confidence faltered, just for a moment. I opened the door and invited her in, my voice steady but firm. "We need to talk." She hesitated, then stepped inside, eyes darting between me and the AG. The cabin, usually my sanctuary, felt like a courtroom now, every detail sharp, every silence heavy. The AG wasted no time. "Karen, we've reviewed the evidence. Your actions, the illegal entry, the harassment, the misuse of HOA authority, they're not just violations of community rules, they're violations of state law." Karen's face tightened. She tried to interrupt, but the AG held up a hand. "Let me finish." He laid out the facts clearly, calmly. The trespassing, the intimidation tactics, the financial irregularities uncovered in the HOA's records. He presented the documentation I'd gathered, photos, videos, letters, each piece a nail in Karen's facade. I watched as her smugness cracked, her eyes flickering with panic. The woman who once ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist was now exposed, vulnerable. "You have no right to treat homeowners this way," the AG said, "and if these actions continue, there will be legal consequences." Karen's voice wavered. "I was just doing my job." "Your job does not include breaking the law," he lied sharply. For a moment, the room was silent except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Then Karen's mask slipped completely. Her shoulders sagged and the defiance drained from her eyes. It was the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment justice began to take shape. I felt a surge of courage flood through me. All the fear, the frustration, the sleepless nights, they were worth it. Because standing there, with the AG by my side, I wasn't just defending my cabin, I was standing up for every homeowner who had ever been bullied or silenced. Karen finally turned and left, her retreat a quiet admission of defeat. As the door closed behind her, the tension in the room lifted. The lake outside shimmered in the fading light, peaceful once again. This was more than a victory. It was a turning point. Justice had been served, not through anger or violence, but through truth, courage, and the power of the law. And as I looked around my cabin, my sanctuary, I knew this fight had been worth every moment. Because sometimes, standing up to the entitled means more than winning. It means reclaiming your home, your peace, and your dignity. And that's exactly what I did. In the weeks that followed the confrontation, everything began to change. The HOA board was shaken to its core. Karen, once the unchallenged queen of the neighborhood, was swiftly removed from her position. The state attorney general's investigation uncovered enough evidence to not only strip her of authority but also to press legal charges for her illegal actions and abuse of power. The community, which had been divided and tense for so long, started to come together. Neighbors who had once been hesitant to speak up now rallied around me, sharing their own stories of harassment and intimidation. We formed a united front, demanding transparency, fairness, and respect from the HOA. Because when the powerful start to crumble, the fallout can be explosive, and trust me, you don't want to miss a second of it. The day Karen showed up at my cabin again, I knew this wasn't going to be like before. This time, I wasn't alone. The state attorney general was with me, calm, authoritative, and ready to back me up. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin prickle and your heart race. Karen arrived just as the sun was dipping behind the trees, casting long shadows across the porch. She stepped out of her car with that same smug expression, like she owned the place. But this time, when she saw the AG standing beside me, her confidence faltered, just for a moment. I opened the door and invited her in, my voice steady but firm. "We need to talk." She hesitated, then stepped inside, eyes darting between me and the AG. The cabin, usually my sanctuary, felt like a courtroom now, every detail sharp, every silence heavy. The AG wasted no time. "Karen, we've reviewed the evidence. Your actions, the illegal entry, the harassment, the misuse of HOA authority, they're not just violations of community rules, they're violations of state law." Karen's face tightened. She tried to interrupt, but the AG held up a hand. "Let me finish." He laid out the facts clearly, calmly. The trespassing, the intimidation tactics, the financial irregularities uncovered in the HOA's records. He presented the documentation I'd gathered, photos, videos, letters, each piece a nail in Karen's facade. I watched as her smugness cracked, her eyes flickering with panic. The woman who once ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist was now exposed, vulnerable. "You have no right to treat homeowners this way," the AG said, "and if these actions continue, there will be legal consequences." Karen's voice wavered. "I was just doing my job." "Your job does not include breaking the law," he lied sharply. For a moment, the room was silent except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Then Karen's mask slipped completely. Her shoulders sagged and the defiance drained from her eyes. It was the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment justice began to take shape. I felt a surge of courage flood through me. All the fear, the frustration, the sleepless nights, they were worth it. Because standing there, with the AG by my side, I wasn't just defending my cabin, I was standing up for every homeowner who had ever been bullied or silenced. Karen finally turned and left, her retreat a quiet admission of defeat. As the door closed behind her, the tension in the room lifted. The lake outside shimmered in the fading light, peaceful once again. This was more than a victory. It was a turning point. Justice had been served, not through anger or violence, but through truth, courage, and the power of the law. And as I looked around my cabin, my sanctuary, I knew this fight had been worth every moment. Because sometimes, standing up to the entitled means more than winning. It means reclaiming your home, your peace, and your dignity. And that's exactly what I did. In the weeks that followed the confrontation, everything began to change. The HOA board was shaken to its core. Karen, once the unchallenged queen of the neighborhood, was swiftly removed from her position. The state attorney general's investigation uncovered enough evidence to not only strip her of authority but also to press legal charges for her illegal actions and abuse of power. The community, which had been divided and tense for so long, started to come together. Neighbors who had once been hesitant to speak up now rallied around me, sharing their own stories of harassment and intimidation. We formed a united front demanding transparency, fairness, and respect from the HOA.